In the deepest silences of the earth, where light doesn't reach and even thoughts can't escape, there exists something that doesn't move out of hunger. It moves because of a curse. The Wendigo is an ancient creature, predating names and maps. Extremely tall, absurdly thin, with bones seeming to pierce through its ashen skin like a frozen corpse. Its eyes are too deep, like holes that absorb light. And where there's warmth, it brings cold. Where there's voice, it brings silence. Where there's soul, it brings hunger. They say it was born when a man, in the desperation of winter, consumed his own kind. But others say the Wendigo isn't born, it awakens. And once awakened, it seeks to satiate its hunger. The trip to Mammoth Cave National Park was planned by Maya, the most curious of the group. With her were Jonas, her skeptical and sarcastic boyfriend, Rachel, a lover of esotericism and astrology, and Dylan, shy, but always with a camera at the ready. They were drawn not only by the endless caves and hidden trails of the Kentucky Park, but also by the chance to visit a nearby village of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. The idea was to learn about the culture, hear ancient stories. Something different for their travel vlog. In the village, they were offered tea, reserved smiles, and long gazes. But it was in the chief's voice that the chill came. A man of few words who walked as if carrying centuries on his shoulders. He observed them with eyes as dark as a cave entrance. Don't walk alone, and don't enter the caves where the wind doesn't pass. Jonas laughed afterward, saying it was tourist talk. Maya became pensive. Rachel wrote everything down as if it were a ritual. And Dylan filmed, but couldn't post it. They reached the campsite in the late afternoon, after a long hike through Mammoth Cave's trails. The path was well marked at first, but after some impulsive decisions by Jonas and Maya, they decided to follow a narrower, less marked trail that Rachel claimed to have seen in forums about forgotten places in the park. They set up tents near a peculiar rock formation, an inclined wall that seemed to hide something behind it. The trees there formed a natural arch over the clearing, as if the forest, instead of retreating, bent to watch. While Dylan tested the camera, capturing the last orange hues of the sky, Rachel lit small candles around the tent. She said it was spiritual protection. Maya and Jonas, already with flashlights in hand and poorly drawn maps, suggested a short exploration before dinner. They wouldn't go far, they promised, just to take a look at what's behind the rock formation. They found the cave entrance 20 minutes later, hidden under thick roots and accumulated leaves. It was narrow but natural, and the darkness inside didn't seem like just an absence of light, but of time. Maya was the first to enter, using the flashlight as a spearhead. Jonas followed, joking they'd find treasures or at least ancient indigenous graffiti. Rachel hesitated but was convinced. Dylan came last, testing the camera's light in the damp tunnel. The smell inside was different. Not the expected scent of wet earth in caves, but something more stagnant, reminiscent of mold, old stone, and moisture that didn't drip. The echo seemed to swallow voices. After the first 20 meters, they saw the gallery widen. The ceiling rose abruptly, revealing a dark chamber that even the flashlights couldn't fully illuminate. Around, marks on the stones, scratches. Some seemed recent. Rachel lagged behind and called Dylan. She asked if he also felt it, the muffled sound, the weight in the air, as if something was waiting for them to take one more step. Jonas, already in the center of the chamber, clapped and shouted to hear the echo. But there was no response. The cave didn't return any sound. At that moment, Dylan noticed. The camera had stopped recording despite the battery being full. He tried to turn it on again. Nothing. Looking back, the cave entrance seemed farther away, as if the tunnel had stretched behind them. And then came the smell. Strong, cold, nauseating, like rotting meat stored in ice for too long. Maya covered her face and gagged. Jonas finally stopped joking, and Rachel fell to her knees, saying she heard something walking well beneath their feet. On the farthest wall, a crack appeared. It wasn't there before, a vertical fissure that pulsed slightly, as if breathing. From it came a sound none of them could describe. It wasn't a scream, it wasn't a whisper. It was something that seemed to come from inside the head, as if the cave, alive, said, "Now." A shadow moved inside, and when Dylan raised the camera to record, he He saw in the viewfinder something not visible to the naked eye, a tall, thin silhouette with almost translucent bones under pale skin. No eyes, no face, but with a presence that paralyzed. They ran, tried to exit through the same entrance, but the tunnel was no longer the same. The roar exploded like thunder, an unnatural sound that made the walls vibrate and the bones of the four tremble. It was the kind of noise you don't hear, you feel. Soon after, Rachel's scream echoed, sharp, desperate, and then came the sounds, dry cracks like bones breaking, and something wet, like flesh being torn by hand. Maya shouted her friend's name. Jonas pulled her. "Run!" he said without looking back. Dylan came behind, panting, trying to film with a trembling hand even if he didn't know why. The tunnels seemed to multiply. Each turn led to another, even tighter. The living cave closed around them. The flashlight flickered. The camera failed. It was as if space itself tried to prevent any escape. At a fork, Jonas turned left with Maya. Dylan hesitated, looked back, by instinct, by guilt, and slipped. He fell down a slope covered in slime. The flashlight and camera hit the rocks as he disappeared alone through a narrow tunnel. On the other side, Maya and Jonas ran. Their steps echoed in cold galleries until Jonas stopped. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Maya just looked. The air was cold, and then she saw something very tall, very thin, bending to pass through the tunnel behind them. The creature's bones protruded under its grey skin. No eyes, no haste. Jonas pushed Maya and stayed. The Wendigo doesn't run, it observes, and then it rips. Maya fled without looking back. Her breath was erratic, her vision blurred by tears and dust. Every passage looked the same. The cave twisted around her, alive and endless, like a nightmare made of stone. She stumbled through tight corridors, her flashlight now nothing more than a flicker against the dark. She finally stopped when she saw something lying ahead on the ground, a shape. For a moment, she thought it was Dylan, but it wasn't. It was Jonas, or what was left of him. His head lay alone in the dirt, eyes wide open, still catching the beam of her light. His mouth was frozen in a scream that never ended. She screamed, staggered back, and behind her, descending from the ceiling as if the rock itself gave birth to death, came the Wendigo. It unfolded slowly, tall, skeletal, its limbs too long, its joints cracking as it moved. The stench of rotting ice and burnt meat filled the chamber. Its fingers dragged against the stone. Its presence froze her soul. Maya tried to run. She didn't get far. It snatched her like she weighed nothing, and it fed like it had waited centuries. Far deeper in the cave, Dylan was still alive for now. The echoes of Maya's screams had faded, but they lingered in his chest like a second heartbeat. He knew. He was alone now. Alone. With it. The chamber he'd entered was wide, vaulted, and dry. He turned slowly, flashlight shaking in his hand. Then, a crack. Stone breaking in the distance. Another, closer, and a breath, slow, wet, from above. He raised the light, and he saw the Wendigo hanging upside down like a monstrous bat, unfolded from the ceiling, its bones twisting unnaturally, empty eyes locked on him. Dylan didn't scream, didn't run. He raised the camera and recorded. To the end. That's why to this day many indigenous tribes avoid the deepest caves. It's not because of the cold, not the darkness. It's because of what lives inside, because of what awakens when you step where silence was never meant to be broken. Caves hold more than stone and time. They hold hunger. They hold echoes, not from the past, but from something that is still there. The Wendigo doesn't need light, doesn't need space, only fear. It knows when someone enters where they shouldn't. It senses who is weak, who is the perfect prey. And when the trail disappears, when the batteries fail, when the screams don't come back in echoes, it's because he has already started following. The elders knew. That's why they avoided certain cracks in the rock, tunnels that seemed to breathe. They left carvings at the entrance, stacked stones, not to protect those who entered, to warn, to stop what had already been awakened from waking again. Maya, Jonas, Rachel, and Dylan didn't know. They didn't respect the warning. And now the Wendigo is free. He doesn't only live in caves, he lives in windless silence, in the cold that doesn't come from stone, in the dark that seems to breathe. And if one day you hear something walking where no one should be, if the air suddenly turns heavy, if the sound vanishes as if the world's throat has been gripped, it's him and you. Would you enter a place where even echoes don't answer, where invisible eyes are already open? If this story chilled you like a breath from below, drop a comment. Which part of the world should the next creature come from, the kind that never forgets the scent of who woke it? Because sometimes the thing hunting you in the dark already knows exactly where you are,